After a day in which European leaders gave urgently needed solidarity and support on the world stage to President Volodymyr Zelensky after his extraordinary meeting in the Oval Office on Friday, he gave a wide-ranging press conference, his first public remarks really addressing what happened in the White House on Friday when he met President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance. At first, he was asked if he thought he could salvage the relationship with the United States. Here's what he said.
As regards salvaging the relationship that you asked about, I think that our relationship will continue because this is more than relationships in one moment. We need to be open. Ukraine is not the largest country in the world. However, everyone can see how Ukraine is fighting for its independence and freedom. And we are grateful to the people of the United States.
He was then asked to react to some of the suggestions from Trump's inner circle that perhaps he needs to step aside if he can't fix his relationship with the US president. Here's how he tackled the question of his resignation.
If I am to be changed, and I'll hear, how can I put it, with what's happening with the support to change me, it will not be easy, because it is not enough to simply hold elections. You would need to prevent me from participating in the elections, and it will be a bit more difficult. So they'll have to negotiate with me, and I said that I'm exchanging it for NATO membership, and then it means that I fulfilled my mission.
He also said he was willing to sign the rare earth minerals deal, even though we've heard from US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent that it is at present not on the table. And also, too, he struck a tone which was frankly conciliatory for most of it. Asked, though, directly by a reporter if he would apologise to President Trump, he didn't take that opportunity and instead gave an answer about Ukraine's dead and its suffering and how, in response to suggestions he doesn't want peace, he said he would love the war to stop, not just today, but have never have started in the first place.
CNN's Claire Sebastian is following developments. She joins us now live from London. Good morning to you, Claire. So what more can you tell us about or what came out of this summit and where do things go from here?
Well, look, I think it was very clear, Rosemary, that the summit needed to be more than about nice words. There needed to be an actual action that came out of this. So there you see this plan that's starting to take shape, perhaps led by the UK and France, to quote the British Prime Minister, to stop the fighting. We need to see a little bit more meat on the bones of that yet. What we know so far is only what's been reported in Le Figaro, which is that it could include this month-long truce, which would involve, as an initial phase, merely sort of the war in the air, at sea, and then to stop attacks on critical energy infrastructure, moving later to the issue of troops on the ground and on the front line. So that's what we know so far. I think there were two key audiences that Europe was trying to balance here. Number one, of course, Ukraine, to try to strengthen their hand, make sure that they were firmly at the center of this process, to try to build them back up so that they could build back ties with the US after that catastrophic meeting in the Oval Office on Friday. I think to an extent that succeeded. Certainly was helpful that President Zelensky met with the King as well on Sunday, perhaps easing some of the political pressure that the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has felt after offering President Trump that second state visit with the King. I think the second audience clearly is the US. It is very clear, listening to the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, that their pre-approval for this plan was sought. He spoke to President Trump on Friday night, he said, and on Saturday night. A lot of pre-work was done before the leaders met in London on Sunday, and so I think President Trump was party to that. And I think you do see in this idea of a truce perhaps some nod to the sort of the actions that President Trump has spoken about. He has been pretty clear that he didn't want to talk about security guarantees before there was a ceasefire. So the idea of a truce perhaps gets closer to that. But look, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, was on ABC on Sunday. He said not a lot about this plan. He said he'd spoken to the British and French foreign ministers on Saturday, but he seemed to suggest that not much had changed in the US position. Take a listen.
Everyone knows the history here, the back and forth. We understand that. We all understand that. But the question now is, can we get them to a table to negotiate? That's our goal. Don't do anything to disrupt that. And that's what Zelensky did, unfortunately, is he found every opportunity to try to Ukraine-splain on every issue. Then he confronts the vice president. When the vice president says, The goal here is diplomacy. He immediately jumps in and challenges the vice president. Well, what kind of diplomacy? Well, so we all understand, okay, that Putin is not going to be an easy negotiator.
Well, I think, look, there's several problems there, specifically for Ukraine. The use of the phrase Ukraine-splain is clearly negative and doesn't suggest that much progress has been made in repairing the fraying ties that we saw in the Oval Office on Friday. I think, look, if you count the numbers of times that we heard the phrase lasting peace from European leaders over the weekend, there is a serious concern that the US approach of bringing Russia to the table first, of essentially elevating Russia while diminishing Ukraine, would not achieve a lasting peace. But look, the reality is Europe and Ukraine continue to insist that they cannot do this. They cannot get to a point of a real deterrent, a post-war deterrent that would actually work and deter further Russian aggression without the US. So I think the focus now potentially goes back to Zelensky. Is there some kind of strong gesture he can offer to the Trump administration that would repair this frayed relationship, Rosemary?
And Claire, how is Russia reacting to all of this?
So clearly, this is more and better than Russia could have ever hoped for, and they are very much exploiting the ongoing PR wins that they're getting out of this. The rhetoric increasingly that we see from Russia is sort of emphasizing the idea of Europe and the US being divided. Clearly, this is grist to their mill. They have long been looking for holes in the NATO alliance. They're continuing to sort of praise Trump as the grown-up in the room here. And I think the overt or indeed veiled criticism that we hear of Zelensky and Ukraine from the US just fuels the argument in Russia that Zelensky is, number one, incompetent, number two, illegitimate, and number three, unwilling to seek peace. So we saw a new interview from the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, on Sunday. Take a listen to a portion of that.
If you look at history in retrospect, you will see that the Americans did not play any such inflammatory role. And now, after Biden's presidential term, came the people who want to be guided by common sense, who bluntly declare, we want to put an end to all wars, we want peace. And who is currently demanding the continuation of the banquet in the form of a war? Europe.
So, I mean, look, you have to point out that Russia has spent much of the past 3 years and even more than that blaming the US for fomenting a lot of global conflicts. So clearly this is a reversal. This is an attempt to exploit the moment here. In terms of what this actually does practically, I don't think this makes any concessions from Russia any more likely. They haven't made any so far. They haven't suggested that they will. Sergei Lavrov last week in a separate press conference said that, look, Russia still wants to conquer all of the 4 territories that it's illegally annexed. It still hasn't done that, and that they may have ambitions even beyond that. So I think those maximalist goals of Russia and Ukraine haven't changed. And meanwhile, look, they have said, of course, Putin has suggested that he would be willing to come to the negotiating table with the US, but they are clearly going to come to that table if indeed we get to that point, very much emboldened. Rosemary?
Thanks to Claire Sebastian bringing us that live report from London.